All right. Very good afternoon to everybody who's tuned in for this live. Let me just check if we are live or not. Just give me one moment. Um, right. So we are live. Welcome to today's class. Thank you so much for tuning in. So today's class is again geared at doing a grammar roundup. Right. We have our CAT exam approaching very soon. So I just wanted to revise everything important pertaining to grammar, so that you are well prepared to tackle all the questions pertaining to these themes. Allow me to quickly give you an introduction to the Unacademy platform before we begin with this drill for the day, right? Before we begin with the lesson for the day. Right. So Unacademy today is perhaps India's largest learning platform pertaining to any kind of preparation for competitive exams. This YouTube channel is particularly for management exams, and there are three caveats on which Unacademy essentially functions, wherein we strive to bring you the top educators who create quality content to give you a great learning experience, right? I am Prankur Arora. I am going to be your instructor on this journey of learning, wherein I'll be taking you through multiple aspects pertaining to the verbal ability and reading comprehension portions of these management exams. Um, I've been in the learning industry for a better part of the last couple of years, where I've had the opportunity to consult with various organizations pertaining to various aspects of verbal ability as well as reading comprehension. Um, Organizations on different aspects of communication as well. Organizations such as Marico, Becton Dickinson, Interglobe, and the likes. I am a published author. I wrote a book called It's Not Funny, got published a couple of years back. And I also hold advanced certifications in facilitation from an American organization known as Leadership Management International. LMI is perhaps the world's largest organization working in the space of leadership, and I co founded a startup by the name of Thought Sutra, which is about empowering the creative arts ecosystem in our country. Right, so welcome aboard this journey of learning, wherein we'll be taking you through multiple aspects of uh, verbal ability as well as reading comprehension. Today's class is a roundup on everything pertaining to grammar, right? So there are quite a lot of features that add to the Unacademy pedagogy. Some of those features include giving you access to daily life classes, such as this one, wherein all interaction pertaining to questions and discussions and everything happens in real time, right? And we also regularly conduct live tests and quizzes. These are conducted to essentially um, these are essentially conducted to give you a good perspective about where you lie when it comes to your preparation, when it comes to your learning journey, because we give you data such as the time you're spending on every question during those tests, what are your topic wise scores, section wise scores. All that will help you develop a lot of perspective. All the courses on our platform are pretty much structured very much in line with the exam syllabus that you're preparing for, to help you get the best of everything. And with one subscription you get unlimited access to anything and everything, all kinds of live and recorded courses that you can access from the comfort of any of your devices. As I said, there are quite a lot of educators on the platform, and all these educators essentially uh, over the years have mentored thousands and thousands of aspirants into various top tier business institutions, right? We regularly conduct live classes for free with these educators so that you can experience the platform for free before deciding whether you want to avail the key benefits that come with subscription or not. New batches, new courses, they keep on going live. We've got educators teaching in vernacular languages as well. So if you're not as comfortable with English, you will find somebody who's teaching in a regional language that you were brought upon. And as I mentioned, we conduct these tests. We all interaction on the platform happens in real time. Question answers are conducted in the form of live polls, right? And learners participate in those live polls, and they compete for a place on the leaderboard, which is broadcast to anybody and everybody during that class. Uh, right? And a very important thing is that, you'll see that I'll scribble a lot of stuff on these class notes throughout the lesson. So all these class notes are made available to you once you subscribe to the platform. Talking of subscription, these are the various subscription models that Unacademy makes available to you. You can clearly see that as the time period of subscription goes up, the cost of the subscription per month is going down dramatically, right? And if you use my name, Prankur, you will get an extra 10% off on any of the subscriptions that you're going for. Having said that, let's begin with the lesson for the day. The first question is essentially for us to identify the error. So these are sentence correction questions pertaining to grammar, wherein you have to identify the part that contains an error, right? If you're able to figure that out, hit me up on the chat and then we'll discuss it. Right. Film viewers claim that the number of scenes depicting alcohol consumption have increased dramatically over the last decade. Right. Um, Film viewers claim that the number of scenes depicting alcohol consumption have increased dramatically over the last decade. We are saying the number, right? The number is what? The number is singular, right? The number is singular. So whenever we have a singular subject, we need a we need what? We need a singular noun. We need a singular verb. We have a singular subject, we need a singular verb. Also, with the number, it talks about a specific number, so it becomes singular. Whereas when we say a number of people, right, a number is basically talking about a very generic thing, right? We are saying a number of people have been doing this, a number of people went and watched that film, a number of people contracted COVID, a number of people eventually got vaccinated and overcome all the symptoms, right? So the idea is whenever we say a number, then it becomes plural. But whenever we say the number, we are talking about a specific number, and that is why it takes a singular form. So the number of scenes depicting alcohol consumption has increased dramatically over the last decade. All right, let's look at the next question now. 40% of the people alive today have never made a phone call, but 30% still have no electricity connections to their homes. Right. Take 30 seconds, solve it, and then I'll discuss it. Right. So look at the sentence. 40% of the people alive today have never made a phone call, but 30% still have no electricity connections to their homes, right? So we have but as the conjunction here. But is a conjunction that is basically used to express a contrasting sentiment, right? A change in the tone of the sentence occurs when we use but, right? But since we can see, I also use but, right? Since we can see that the both the parts of the sentence before the comma and after the comma are expressing the same kind of sentiment, are falling under the same theme. We are saying 40% of people have never made a phone call, and then we are saying 30% have no electricity. So we are talking about a lack of things in both these cases, and that is why the conjunction that we might use here is and not but. And that is why option B is the correct option in this case, where we use and to join these sentences and not but. All right, let's move on to the next question. We have no choice but to appoint Ria. She is the best of the two candidates, and there is no chance of finding more candidates. Right. So let's look at this. We have no choice but to appoint Ria. She is the better of the two candidates. We will not use the superlative form here, right? Since we are only comparing two people, so we'll say she is the better of the lot. She is the better of the two, right? If we had three or more than three candidates, then we'd have used best, right? Then we'd have used the superlative form, but here we'll use the comparative form, and that is why we'll use better and not best, right? So this is the error here. She is the better of the two candidates. Next question. Neither of my brothers do anything to make life better for our parents who are both suffering from cancer. Neither of my brothers do anything to make life better for our parents who are both suffering from cancer. Right? Remember from yesterday's session that whenever we use neither or whenever we use either, the idea essentially is that. Sorry, wait. Whenever we use neither or whenever we use, as I was saying, either, neither or either, and we use them in an isolated fashion wherein we are not using or along with it, right? Or we are not using nor along with neither, right? In these cases, whenever we use neither and either in an isolated fashion, the verb takes a singular form because we are referring to people selectively in an individual way. But whenever we use a neither nor or an either or construction, the noun or the noun phrase that follows nor or is basically what we try to keep the verb in tandem with, right? In those cases, the verb depends on the noun that accompanies nor or that accompanies or. But whenever we use neither or either in an isolated fashion, our verb takes a singular form. So, neither of my brothers does anything to make life better for our parents who are both suffering from cancer. So, in this case, part A contains the error, right? Let's move on to the next question. Workers with less personal problems are likely to be more productive in their work. Now, the idea is that, when it comes to sentences, we have two kinds of objects. One is countable, and the other is uncountable, right? So, whenever we have uncountable objects, whenever we are talking about uncountable things, we use the word less, right? Because we don't know the quantity, right? But whenever it comes to countable stuff, we use few or fewer. Here we are talking about problems, right? So workers with personal problems, with fewer personal problems. Workers with fewer personal problems are likely to be more productive in their work. Since we're talking about countable things, we'll use the term fewer and not the term less. Alright, so this is the part that contains the error, right? Let's move on to the next question. The purpose of organizing all these activities is more to instruct than. So, what is the kind of construction that is being used here? More X than Y. So, more to instruct to provide than to provide entertainment. More to instruct than to provide entertainment. So both of these verbs, they have to be uniform in construction, and In both cases, we'll use what? We'll use the infinitive form, right? Instead of the continuous form. So providing entertainment is the part that contains the error in this case, right? I live on a top floor of an old house. When the wind blows, all the windows rattle. This is a very simple one. If you're able to figure it out, I live on. We are talking about a very specific floor out of an old. There is an old house. There are multiple floors, and I am saying I live on a top floor or on the top floor. Right here, I'm talking about a very specific floor on which I live. There might be multiple floors in the same house. That is why the way we'll do it is the way we'll express it is that I live on the top floor of an old house. When the wind blows, all the windows rattle. All right, let's move on to the next question. This is a slightly tougher question. Invariably, whenever I conduct this question, whenever I include this in my bank of questions, people invariably say that, shouldn't this be on time? Right? Shouldn't this be on time? Had he not reached in time, he would have missed a golden opportunity which comes once in a while. Right? So people invariably ask me if this should be on time. But in such cases, we say in time. He reached in time. Well in time. Do this well in time. Had he not reached in time, he would have missed a golden opportunity which comes once in a while. Uh, this question contains no error. This question contains no error. Pronouns are very much in line, right? And since this sentence is conducted, basically constructed in a hypothetical scenario where we make use of the past tense. Therefore, here we have would have missed, the perfect form of the verb, right? And a golden opportunity which comes. So, the verb is also agreeing with the singular idea of opportunity, right? Once in a while is a phrase, right? So, this sentence essentially contains no error at all. Sorry. Yeah. The Ministry of Labor conducts its basic survey on trade unions each year, gathering information with all labor unions as of June 30, right? So, what are we trying to get at? We are trying to say that there is this Ministry of Labor which conducts a survey on trade unions. The survey is conducted every year where they gather information with all trade unions each year, gathering information with all trade unions as of June 30 होगा या as on June 30 होगा. We are saying till a particular date. They gather all the information pertaining to these trade unions and they do it as on June 30, right? When we are filling our income tax returns, we have to fill in the bank balance as on 31st March, right? So it won't be off, it will be on. All right, so D is the part that contains the error in this one. Next question. This is again a correlative construction, not only X but also Y construction. Not only X but also Y. In these cases, we have to make sure that X and Y are parallel, right? Right. So we just have to make sure that X and Y are uniform in construction. We have to make them parallel. We are all indebted to him for not only holding, holding will come here, not only holding high moral values but also rendering dedicated service for the betterment of human race. So holding and rendering are verbs and they are both in continuous form and the both of them are parallel. So holding has to come after not only, not before, right? So that is why B is the part that contains the error, right? Next question. Right. So we are trying to find the root cause of this recurring problem since the last 4 days. So whenever we are talking about a period, whenever we are talking about a period of time, we use the preposition for. So this will be, we are trying to find out the root cause of this problem for 4 days, right? Since is basically used, I'll write it here. Since is basically used when we are talking about a specific time. We are talking about a specific time. Alright. For is used whenever we are talking about a period of time. Right. So D in that case becomes the most suitable answer option. Right. Okay. A skillful advertiser may be able to create practically a monopoly. So whenever we are saying monopoly for himself, the idea is saying the idea essentially here is we are saying an advertiser may be able to create a monopoly of himself, not because his product is superior, but because he has, both of these are in present tense, right? So not x but y. Here x and y are parallel, right? So C and D contain no error, not because his product is superior, but because he has succeeded in inducing people to believe that it is, right? So but what are we trying to get at? We are trying to say that an advertiser who is skillful, they may be able to create a monopoly of himself, right? The advertiser may be able to create a monopoly of himself, not for himself. He himself will become the monopoly, right? So here the preposition will have to be of, a monopoly of himself. Each animal of the same species looks for the, since we're talking about each animal, so looks makes sense, right? This will be, uh, singular form of the verb. Each animal looks for the same sort of food. Also, there may be other animals of different species competing with the same food or competing for the same food. They will not compete with food, they will compete with each other for food. Right? So, what are we trying to say? We are trying to say that there will be other animals of different species who will be competing with one another for the same kind of food. Right? So, D is the part that contains the error in this question. Shipwrecked on a desert island, coconuts and some other fruits form the basis of the sailor's diet. So, thus far, all the questions that we'd been solving, they were pertaining to correlatives or pronouns or subject verb agreement, noun verb agreement. But this is a question on modifiers, right? When we say shipwrecked on a desert island, who is shipwrecked on a desert island, right? Who is shipwrecked on a desert island? The sailor is, right? But if we were to add sailor here, then we would have to, reconstruct B, C, and D all parts altogether. But we have to identify the error. There is a single error that we have to basically identify here. So, what works well, or what will actually work well, is to, basically tweak the modifier a little bit and add the subject here, add the reference to the sailor here, that when he was shipwrecked on a desert island. When he was shipwrecked on a desert island, coconuts and some other fruits formed the basis of the sailor's diet. So now that we've added the sailor, the subject, within the modifier, we don't need the noun or the noun phrase to come here after the comma. Alright, so A is the part in that case that contains the error. When he was shipwrecked on a desert island, coconuts and some other fruits form the basis of the sailor's diet, right? And because we've discussed modifiers now, so I would like to re-emphasize the kind of modifier questions that you will typically come across when it comes to your cat exam. The first kind of the modifier error would be the dangling modifier, where the target is absent. Target of the modifier is absent from the sentence. The common construction when it comes to dangling modifiers essentially is sentence 1 comma sentence 2, right? Sentence 1 comma sentence 2 is the common construction when it comes to these modifier errors. And what works well is when we try and convert the modifier into a question. Desiring some fame at school. A lot of time was invested in extracurricular activities. Whose time was invested in extracurricular activities and who was desiring fame at school? Right? So, how do we resolve this? We convert the modifier into a question. Desiring some fame at school. Who was desiring some fame at school? I was desiring some fame at school. So, desiring some fame at school, comma, I invested, I invested a lot of, I invested a lot of time in extra curricular activities. Alright, so what do? We convert the modifier into a question and then we go about doing it and then we go about solving it, right? Similarly, there is the case of misplaced modifiers. What happens when we have misplaced modifiers? The modifier is essentially placed away from the word or the phrase that it ought to be modifying, right? So what do we have to do? We have to make sure that the word that the modifier is referring to is next to the modifier. And similarly, in this case also, we try to convert the modifier into a question. The director who failed to be punctual at the set fired the actor. Now, knowing the power dynamics on a film set, we know for a fact that the director sits on top of the actor. The actor does what the director asks them to do, right? So the director uh, is doing the firing, or is the director the one who's getting fired? We know for a fact that the actor is getting fired, right? So makes sense logically that the actor failed to be punctual at the set. So how do we rectify this? The director, the director fired the actor who failed to be punctual at the set, right? Failed Who failed to be punctual. Excuse me. Uh, Excuse me. Right? So the director is doing the firing and the actor is getting fired because the actor failed to be punctual. Right? Let's move on to let's move on to the next question. Now these will be all modifier pertaining questions. Right? Let's try to figure them out. Right. Although covered in about 11 inches of snow, aviation officials said that the conditions on the runway at the time of the emergency landing was acceptable. Right. Okay. The idea here, or the question that we've got to ask ourselves is, what is covered in 11 inches of snow? Or who is covered in 11 inches of snow? Right? What or who is covered in about 11 inches of snow? Aviation officials are covered in about 11 inches of snow, right? So are aviation officials covered in 11 inches of snow? They're not, right? But this is what sentence is saying, right? So we eliminate option A because aviation officials are not covered in 11 inches of snow. Runway is, right? The runway conditions during the emergency landing were acceptable according to aviation officials. Although covered in about 11 inches of snow, the runway conditions. We're not talking about the conditions here, we are talking about the runway, so we eliminate option B as well. Although covered in about 11 inches of snow, according to aviation officials, is again incorrect. Although covered in about 11 inches of snow, the runway was in acceptable condition during the emergency landing, according to aviation officials. So, since we are talking about the runway and the runway is the thing that is covered in 11 inches of snow, this makes sense. Although covered in about 11 inches of snow, aviation officials are not covered in 11 inches of snow, right? So I hope you're getting the drift of it, that when we have to solve modifier related question, it works well if we convert the modifier into a question and look for the target noun or the target noun phrase, right? Modifiers are essentially descriptive words or phrases that are more often than not describing something. Either they're describing a noun, or they're describing a verb, or adverb in the cases of adjectives, right? Right. Let's look at this question now. I hope you've read it by now. Discouraged by new data that show increases in toxic emissions from domestic factories. Who are discouraged? Who are discouraged by new data? Searches for alternative investment opportunities are being conducted by shareholders of the nation's leading manufacturing companies. But who are discouraged by new data? That has to come right after the comma here. Right? Searches is not discouraged. Again, shareholders could be discouraged. Nation's leading manufacturing companies are searching for alternative investment opportunities for its shareholders. Shareholders of the nation's leading manufacturing companies are searching for alternative investment opportunities, or shareholders of the nation's leading manufacturing companies had begun searching for investment opportunities. Had begun does not make sense, right? Had begun does not make sense. The perfect form of the verb here, past perfect tense, will only come when we have two things that happened in the past and one thing preceded another, right? But here two things are not happening, there's only one thing that is happening, right? So discouraged by new data that show increases in toxic emissions from domestic factories, shareholders, because shareholders are the ones who are discouraged by new data, companies are not discouraged. Shareholders of the nation's leading manufacturing companies are searching for alternative investment opportunities, right? This makes the maximum amount of sense, right? Let's look at the next question. Found in the wild only in Australia and New Guinea, powerful back legs. Who is found in the wild? Or what is found in the wild? Right? Who is found in the wild or what is found in the wild? Found in the wild only in Australia and New Guinea, kangaroos. Right? We need kangaroos to come right after the comma. Kangaroos are distinguished from other large mammals by powerful legs with long feet. D looks to be the most appropriate option. Found in the wild only in Australia and New Guinea, kangaroos are being distinguished that are large by powerful legs. Are being distinguished does not make as much sense. Are being distinguished is passive construction. We don't want that. We want active construction, right? So, kangaroos are distinguished from other large mammals by powerful legs with long feet. Responding to growing demand for high end vehicles, the interiors of the newest models are so luxurious that they sell for nearly twice the price of last year's models. Responding to growing demand for high end vehicles. Who are responding to growing demand or what are responding to growing demand? Right? Right? We need that to come right after the comma. Responding to growing demand, automakers will respond to the growing demand, right? Interior cannot respond to the growing demand, automakers can. So out of C and E, now we have to look for one that makes better sense. automakers have installed interiors in the newest models that are so luxurious that they sell. Automakers have installed such luxurious interiors in the newest models that these cars sell. Now, a really important thing for us to look at is when we when we focus on option C. Automakers have installed interiors in the newest models that are so luxurious that they sell. Who does they refer to? What does they refer to? Right? That are so luxurious. They could refer to interiors. They could refer to newest models. They could refer to automakers. There are so many pronoun reference. There are so many plural references, right? So they, as a pronoun in this case, kind of becomes ambiguous because we don't know what they refers to, right? So therefore, we'll go with option E and not with option C. That these cars sell does not leave any scope for ambiguity. These cars sell does not leave any scope for ambiguity, and automakers coming right after the modifier makes the maximum amount of sense. All right. Given its authoritative coverage of other science topics, the textbook's chapter on genetics is surprisingly tentative, which leads one to doubt the author's scholarship in that particular area. Given its authoritative coverage of other science topics, whose authoritative coverage? Whose authoritative coverage? Right? Textbooks authoritative coverage of other science topics, right? That is what makes the maximum amount of sense. So we'll eliminate options A, B, and option D as well, right? Given its authoritative coverage, it refers to the textbook, right? So we have options C and E left now, out of which we have to choose the most viable option. The textbook contains a surprising and tentative chapter on genetics, which leads one to doubt the author's scholarship in that particular area. The textbook is surprisingly tentative in its chapter on genetics, leading one to doubt the author's. The textbook is not surprisingly tentative in its chapter. The textbook contains a surprising and tentative chapter on genetics, which leads this chapter, which here clearly refers to genetics. So C makes better sense than E, and therefore we go with option C. Right, so these are slightly tougher modifier pertaining questions. I hope you're following me and that you're keeping up. Right, now this is a previous year question, and this is a comparison question. This is not really a modifier question. I think we are done with the modifier drill that I had included in today's lesson. So this is a comparison question, and I think this is CAT 2002. All right. The government has given subsidies to the Navratnas, but there is no telling whether the subsequent one will do. Will do what? Will do what? Right. So we need a callback to the previous government's work here, and that is why the only option that is giving us that is option D. What option B and C are doing is they're including more words, right? They're inserting more words in the question. If the government to follow will accept the policy, if the government to follow will adhere to the policy. So we are unnecessarily inserting more words in the question and the sentence, whereas had we to add so here, where the subsequent government will do so. So is doing what? So is basically doing a callback to what the previous government did, right? So instead of adding a lot of new words, we are only adding another word which is so, which is doing a callback to the previous government's decision, the previous government's action, and that is why the most appropriate option is option D in this case, right? The bank holds $3 billion in loans that are seriously delinquent or in such trouble that the bank holds $3 billion in loans that are seriously delinquent or in such trouble that that it does not expect payments to be made when they see this they is referring to bank, but bank is singular. Bank is singular, right? Bank is singular, so this needs to be singular as well, right? That is why we'll eliminate option 1. We'll eliminate option 2 because this is unnecessarily passive construction, right? So we'll eliminate option 2. Option 3, it does not expect payments when it is due. Now this 8 is referring to payments. Payments is plural but it is singular. That is why we'll eliminate option 3. Option 4 is correct because it refers to bank. This refers to the bank, right? And they refers to payments, right? So it does not expect payments to be made when they are due, right? So option 4 seems like the most appropriate answer option. Thomas Eaton's powerful style and his choices of subject. Now, this entire thing is a modifier. We don't have to basically concern ourselves with the modifier because understand that modifiers are constructed on top of the sentence. It will never grammatically modify the sentence. It is modifying a term or a phrase, but grammatically it will not really influence the sentence in terms of the subject and the verb and the pronouns, right? Thomas Eaton's powerful style and his choices of subject, we are talking about multiple things: powerful style and his choices of subject. So these are multiple things, so this is plural, a plural subject. Because this is a plural subject, we need a plural verb, so we need this to be were as disturbing to his own time as they are compelling for ours, right? So has been as disturbing in his own, has to nahi ho sakta because this is singular, we need a plural verb. Had been as disturbing in his own time as it were, again this is singular, right? So this is also incorrect. Plus, we don't need had been, right? Had been is unnecessary use of past perfect tense. Uh, were as disturbing to his own time as they are compelling for ours is the most appropriate construction. So we'll go ahead with that. The themes that Rita Dove explores in her poetry, again, we are talking about themes. We are talking about a plural subject. Themes that Rita Dove explores in her poetry are universal. The verb needs to be plural because we have a plural subject. Are universal, encompassing much of the human condition. So we'll eliminate one. Are universal, they encompass much of the human condition and occasionally deals. This is again, this is singular verb, whereas we are talking about a plural subject. So we'll eliminate option 2. Are universal, encompassing much of the human condition while occasionally dealing with racial issues. So encompassing and dealing are also parallel in this case. So option 3 makes the maximum amount of sense. Iguanas have been an important food source in Latin America since prehistoric times. And we are talking about iguanas. Iguanas is plural, right? Iguanas is plural. Iguanas have been an important food source in Latin America since prehistoric times, and it is singular. It is still prized as a game animal. See, we are talking about iguanas, we have a plural subject, so all references to the subject need to be plural as well, right? So we'll eliminate option 1. We'll eliminate option 2 again because being still prized as a game animal. This is a singular reference. Does not make sense to our plural subject. They are still prized as game animals. This looks appropriate. They are still prized as being a game animal. We are talking about multiple iguanas and then we are saying as being a game animal. Again, a singular reference does not make sense, logically, grammatically incorrect. Right? They are still prized as game animals, makes the maximum amount of sense. Third option seems to be the most viable answer option in this case. All right, so with this, we've come to the end of today's class. You guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in, right? And I'll see you again. We'll be back with another drill pretty soon. Till then, stay safe, stay strong, and stay mellow. I'm also conducting regular section tests on the Unacademy platform as special classes. Those special classes are free, so please go on to the Unacademy platform, subscribe to my channel, and you'll get notified whenever I'm conducting a section test there, so that you're able to tune in for the same and practice, right? So yeah, thank you for showing up, and I'll see you again pretty soon. Bye bye.